Yo, what it do, baby boo? Welcome, guys, to the 30-minute podcast. I That's all I can remember about how my intro goes for my podcast. This is the first episode of the podcast I'm recording in 2025, and this is September. Yeah, I've been away for a while, and it's going to take some adjusting, to get back to how things were. I'm not even sure if I want things to get back to how they were. Anyway, guys, my name is Tito. This is the 30-minute podcast, and I'm back. Hopefully, I'm back for an extended period of time. On this episode, I'm going to explain why I've been away. I'm going to also talk about what the plan is going forward for the rest of this season. I am back for a reason or a few reasons, which I will share. But I think a good place to start would be to explain why I've been away for so long. I think the last episode of the podcast that I released was in November 2024. And I may even take that episode down so that I think that was the first episode of a new season. And since it's been so long since that episode, I might as well just delete it and let the new season start from this episode. And I do believe I'm on my fourth season. Is it my third season or my fourth season? I'll check when I'm uploading this one. But yeah, I'm back, guys. Secondly, sorry about the echo. For those of you who aren't watching this on YouTube, because there is a video version of this on YouTube. For those of you who aren't watching, I'm in a very empty room, an empty white room, and there isn't much furniture in the room. Hence, there's a serious echo. And I'll try and remove the echo in post-production, but if I can't, sorry about it. Why have I been away? For a number of reasons. Scheduling conflicts, right? It just hasn't been easy to find time to record the podcast. Let me try and sit down comfortably. I have the laptop to my left, and I'm holding the microphone, and then there's a camera right in front of me, and everything is kind of like at an angle, so it's a bit awkward, but I want to lean back. And I hope that the camera can still keep me in focus while I lean back. Yes, so scheduling between client work, my YouTube channel where I review Nollywood films, and the personal finance channel, which has been a bit dormant. It's been hard to find time to record the podcast, but most importantly, or the real thing that has kept me away from the podcast, I believe, is the fact that I think topics to talk about, right, on the podcast, I felt like they were good for me, but not good enough for my audience, right? For example, I'd be somewhere and an idea for an episode would come to mind. And I'd be like, yeah, this is a good one, but I'm not sure if my audience would really listen to this episode in like large numbers, right? So there was that. And I think that what I've come to realize at the end of the day is that sometimes, most of the time, maybe I even need to put out content just for myself, and not in the sense that I want to be the one who consumes this content or listens to this content or listens to this episode, but in the sense that I have to be all right with just putting out a video or an episode or a podcast episode or whatever for posterity or just for documentation purposes or just to satisfy my own desire, kind of, and not to worry so much about whether or not it will resonate with my audience. Fine, people who create content always want to put stuff out that resonates with as many people as possible. But at the same time, that can be very daunting if you're constantly thinking of how to satisfy people, So that in my case anyway, that had led to analysis paralysis. So to solve for that, I think I need to, like I said earlier, just be comfortable with putting out episodes that I'm all right with just being largely for me, for whatever reason. It could be, like I said, just for documentation purposes or just for something about podcasting for me anyway, is that sometimes I have conversations with people, right, in the real world. And I remember that I've discussed this thing I'm discussing with them. I've just talked about it on a previous episode of the podcast. So the podcast helps me in that regard. Because say, for example, I'm talking to somebody about, I don't know, this is a good one, right? I was talking to somebody recently about leaving a digital footprint, documenting history, right? The basis of the conversation was that people are not using the internet well enough to document history, we're just using it to consume memes and TikToks and things like that. More people should be using the internet to document history for posterity's sake, right? If I had done an episode on that, right, previously before that conversation, I could have told the person I was talking to that, do you know what? This very same thing we're talking about, I've thought about it and talked about it on my podcast. You should actually listen to it. Here's the link, to try and that would kind of like validate the conversation. So for reasons like that, I think it makes sense to be all right or to be cool with just recording episodes of the podcast that I may feel will not resonate with a large audience, but so far it makes sense to me, then that should be good enough. And this brings me to this conversation of this issue of, well, it's a bit of an issue that's bubbling under, but I saw a YouTube video a couple of weeks ago about how hobbies are dying. People aren't really doing hobbies anymore. And the summary of it all is because we feel like if we're not doing something that is not generating value to the greater society or earning us money, then it's a waste of time. Because think about it. If your hobby is playing the guitar, right? By the time you think of, okay, I should grab my guitar and play my guitar just as a hobby for like 30 minutes, before you're done thinking about that, it's very likely you think of how you could have been spending that 30 minutes doing something that would maybe generate income or that could have been more productive. It's just this world we live in where everything has to be productive, or it has to generate money, or it has to generate views and likes and things like that. We're now no longer doing things because they just satisfy us, because they make us feel good, or because we enjoy doing them. Very few people nurture their hobbies, and that's why a lot of people end up monetizing their hobbies, right? Because of this productivity craze that's around these days. So yeah, I should also be comfortable with the podcast being a hobby, right? Me doing these things or looking at my podcast in these ways that I've mentioned will help me to show up more regularly to record. It will let me know that it's not such a bad thing if, dozens or hundreds or thousands of people don't listen to each episode, right? That'll make it easier on me. Another challenge I've been having with the podcast, I think, is the video element of the podcast. It's so much easier to have a podcast that's audio only because you don't need to get dressed. You don't need to get out of bed, in fact. You can just turn on your microphone and just hit record and yap away. But when you have a video element of the podcast, or you want to have a video element of the podcast like I do, you then have to, shave and have a shower and look presentable and turn on the camera. And this camera I'm recording with right now, it took a while before I haven't put this particular camera that I use for the podcast, I haven't put it on in a while. So I had to set the date and the time and, go into settings and see what video settings I was in and everything. I was already feeling bogged down and like, do I really need this video element of the podcast? So that too is an issue. And when I'm done recording, I have to transfer the files and touch it up a bit and do this and that and layer the audio of the from the audio file with the video file. And there's just a lot more. It's more labor intensive when you have a video element to your podcast. A podcast is so much easier when it's just audio only. Now, the third challenge that I had and that kept me away from the podcast was the fact that it's called the 30-minute podcast, my podcast, right? I always in my mind felt like each episode needs to be in the neighborhood of 30 minutes, like maybe just a little under 30 minutes or a little over 30 minutes, right? It wouldn't make sense for me to have a podcast called the 30-minute podcast, but yet episodes are like 10 minutes or 9 minutes or 17 minutes. But to be honest, it's just a name, right? I think I myself and probably my audience, however many they may be, they'd be fine with an episode being 8 minutes or 21 minutes or whatever, so far or as long as it comes out at a stipulated time regularly, right? That's better than nothing. And me feeling like my podcast has to be in, the duration of each episode has to be like around 30 minutes. It's unnecessary. The name is just the name. It doesn't mean that each episode has to be 30 minutes on the dot. And that was a challenge for me because um recording a 30-minute episode, and if an episode is 30 minutes, chances are that you've recorded longer than 30 minutes, and maybe you've cut it down a bit to be closer to 30, right? The point is, it's not, for me anyway, maybe I don't know about for other people, but for me, it's not necessarily easy to be in an empty room holding a microphone and recording or talking to myself essentially for upwards of 30 minutes. It's not the easiest thing. And you find yourself having to structure your sentences and your line of thought in a certain way because you're talking to people who are not in your head. A conversation with yourself can be all over the place because you are talking to yourself and you understand what you're saying, and you can move things around subconsciously because you are talking to yourself in your mind, or even if it's verbally. So far the conversation is just with yourself, but when you're talking to other people, you have to be able to think on their behalf and arrange your line of thinking and your thought process in a way that they can understand, right? So yeah, these are the issues and these are the challenges. So these are the things that have kept me from the podcast for the past few months, over almost a year, to be honest. So that's why I've been away. Now, why am I back? Why am I back to recording on the podcast? I'm back for pretty much the same reason why I started the podcast in the first place, which is because there are lots of things that I want to say, and I do not have an outlet to say them in or with, aside from the podcast. There are lots of conversations, and these, let me take a slight detour. One of the downsides of being single is that you don't have somebody to share your thoughts with, deep thoughts, or ideas that cross your mind. That's the benefit of having a significant other. You can have the most random conversations with them, right? And it's not necessarily outlandish or out of place. But when you don't have a significant other, and you don't have like a best friend or somebody who is readily accessible for you to discuss things with, pretty much at the drop of a hat or spontaneously or without even making a reservation or things like that, when you don't have that, then you don't have those opportunities to have those conversations, right? Conversations where maybe you just want to thrash out a thought or bounce ideas off someone. You don't have those opportunities because you don't have that significant other or that close person to talk to. And it's so that I can have these conversations through this medium. That's why, well, one of the reasons why I started the podcast in the first place. And in recent months, there have been several things that I've wanted to discuss, many of them around dating and relationships, that the friends that I typically talk about these things with, they're a bit tired of hearing me talk about the problems with the dating world and how I think we can solve the issues with dating and relationships. I can tell by how their eyes glaze over or how they try and change the topic that they are not keen on having those conversations, which is understandable and it's fine. And of which, such friends, I don't have too many of them. It's not everyone I bring these things up with. But that's what the podcast is good for. I can just, bare my heart and share my thoughts on the podcast. And in the process of even talking about things, I'm getting new ideas, I'm getting answers to questions, and I'm just putting it out there, which is also very important. So that's why I'm back, because lots of things have crossed my mind, things I want to talk about or I want to document, or things that I want to share, many of which I believe are solution centered. Me not being able to share them, it feels like they just dissipate into the ether, into nothingness, and they're not utilized and extracted and used for the greater good. So if I show up on the podcast and I talk about these things, then there's a greater chance of these thoughts and these conversations being channeled productively, one way or the other. So that's my thinking anyway, and that's why I'm back. There are so many things that I want to discuss, and the next episode will be, which I'm going to record pretty much immediately after this episode, so as not to stall, so just to know that I have, after this episode, I already have another episode good to go. The next episode is going to be on the solutions. What can be like a lasting solution or solutions to the challenges people are having in the dating world today? And because I'll delve more into that when I get into that, but just as a summary, I feel like a lot of the content we see about relationships on social media, on YouTube, and whatnot, they are not solution oriented. Um, I don't know if I feel like I said the wrong thing just there, so I'll say that again. Lots of the content and the videos we see online about relationships and dating and whatnot, I feel like they're not solution focused, right? And that's why we're just going around in circles and circles in the dating world. And I have certain ideas that I want to put forward that I believe would help myself and other single people to, in the dating world, to settle down, to find the right person, and to know how to go about finding love and things like that. So yeah, that's going to be the next episode. But yeah, so that's pretty much this episode in a nutshell. I'm looking at the time on the on my laptop now. I've done about 17 minutes, which isn't bad. I won't mind ending the episode here so that it's not too long. And essentially, I just wanted to come back and tell you guys why I've been away and why I'm back and what the plan is going forward. In the next episode, which like I said, I'll record immediately after this one, I will tell you what my plan is for. They're like 12 episodes that I've like outlined. Not, I haven't outlined them yet, but I've listed out 12 different topics with regards something in particular, right? And I will share the details of that in the next episode, right? So maybe that can be an incentive for you guys to check out the next episode. The plan for the podcast is for new episodes to come out every Saturday morning. Every Saturday morning. Yes. So while right now this is not a Saturday morning where I'm recording this episode, the plan is that by Saturday morning this episode will be out. Thank you guys so much for your wow. Thank you guys so much for your time. This has been interesting. It's been uncomfortable, but such is the nature of these things when you've been away from something for so long, and in a new space too, for that matter. I look forward to going back to recording in my regular space. But thank you guys so much for watching and listening. I can't remember how I used to end the podcasts. There's so much homework I need to do, but I will not be deterred by that. I know I used to say something. I know I used to say I'll catch you guys in the next one, but I feel like I used to say other things before that. Anyway, let me just end the episode here. It's great to be back. I hope you guys will stick with me. And yeah, every Saturday morning, hopefully we have a meeting or we'll make it a date each Saturday morning for a new episode of the 30-minute podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one. Peace.